will have a little button that says it's okay, so please press that. All right. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Pauline. All right. So we had one more person come in, so welcome. My name is Philippe Palmer. As I said before, I am the ARC Area Development Coordinator. I will be the one to help you through your application, and there are other ARC grants that I will talk about, but I'll get to that later on in the presentation. For right now, we're talking about the Area Development Grant specifically. So. See. Eligibility. You must be a 501c3 status or like status. So if you were a church, they have different statuses, but church is eligible to apply. NPOs, CBOs, so nonprofit organizations or community-based organizations, educational institutions. So that means secondary, primary, or tertiary, so that would be higher education institutes can apply. Local, municipal, or even county governments can apply, and sovereign native nations can apply. ARC does not fund individuals or for-profit businesses. However, if for-profit businesses are partnered with any of the above entities, they can be part of an ARC project. And I'll try to go slow and allow for a little bit of time for questions. So if anyone has a question, please feel free. This is, this should be a conversation. Okay. So this is just an example of some prior successful applications. Most of them have been in the past program funding. So if you see, you have educational. So the very first one is opportunities in rural education, transformative workforce, Olean Community and Cultural Center, community facility. Actually, that's one that's a little bit different, that goes beyond the program. Let's see, FLX Works, Business Incubator, career and technical education, child development. So a lot of these things deal with workforce development and programmatic funding. However, ARC also likes to fund supplies, equipment, and people being employed. So just keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about your potential project. And here are just some it's actually 2023 stats. So New York State got $2.6 million in funding from ARC, and a little bit hard to see for me. And most of that funding was from workforce development. Another 1.4 million went to, what was that? Community leaders and capacity. And then community infrastructure was 1.4 million, and additional priorities are 180,000. So again, workforce development is really something that ARC prioritizes, but that's not to say there aren't other things that they try to fund, because they're really trying to uplift Appalachia so that they are competitive with the outer region. Okay, real quick, here is the calendar for this year. This is the second webinar that we're doing. So the next date that would be important to y'all would be March 15th. That is the deadline for the letter of intent. It is a Wednesday. If, let's say, because it's pretty much only me that is running this show, if you're kind of stuck or you're still like developing something, I'm fairly flexible with regard to this calendar. And I'm the one that made the calendar up. And so if you communicate with me, there is some wiggle room, right? And I purposely put the calendar together in this way so that there is some flexibility. So if you, again, this calendar is also, or the application process, I should say, is a scaffolded approach. So we do the letter of intent in March. By the end of March, you'll get feedback whether we think that your application you should move forward with the application, or if it might be better for you to apply for other funding. And I can also help you with, locating that funding. And if need be, you're interested in other funding and, you need some grant help, I can, by all means, I can help you with that. But the area development is my main grant focus. And then the next part of the application that's important is June 2nd, which the pre-application is due at 4 p.m. So the pre-application is your project narrative, your budget narrative, and your timeline. So those three portions of the application, that's about 15 pages roughly. And so we don't want to shove everything at you all at once, because what if you do all the work about a 50-page application and then all of a sudden you get rejected? That's a lot of time and effort that you've spent, right? And so this is why we scaffolded the application process in that way. So after your pre-application, we'll look over it, we'll give you feedback, and then tentatively July 13th, every applicant will be invited here to Southern Tier West, and you will be able to do a presentation. I think it's about 5 minutes you'll have to tell the board, the Southern Tier West board, about your program that you want to implement. And then it'll be about 2 minutes of Q&A. And then after that, they will convene, they will give me notes, and then I will communicate those notes to you. And then we can, again, flesh out your narratives a little bit better, fill in some spaces, fill in some answers with questions with answers, answers with questions. Either way, vice versa. We'll shine your application up, and then you have a draft of your full application will be due August 25th. So the full application is all your letters of commitment, all your letters of support, all the, what do they call it? Standard forms that New York State and the Appalachian Regional Commission require. Your budget in, I think, quadruplicate, and like all the other standard forms that are not fun to fill out, but they are required. So that the draft is due, like I said, August 25th, and then we'll have until September 22nd to get everything together. And then October 1st of this year is when I will send everything off to the state. So there's a few days, about like 8, how many days are in September? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Yeah, so there's 8 days between that last deadline for your final application and me sending your all the applications off to the state. So I'll go through them, and if there's anything that I need that I see is missing, any mistakes, then I will contact you, and you have time to, fix it, or get the letters that are missing, or get the information that might not be in the letters of commitment to, stick them in there. And then we wait. It's a long, long waiting game. And so, yeah, I think this year, so for fiscal year 2023, the applications that, were started in 2022, they go through various channels within the state. And then by February, so February of the following year, if we're lucky, they go to the federal government, so the federal Appalachian Regional Commission office. And then they will be reviewed by a program manager. They'll be assigned to a program manager, and then it'll take them a little while to go through them. If there's any questions, again, if there's anything that's missing or anything that that needs to be kind of fleshed out a little bit more, they will contact us. I will contact you. And then you have the opportunity to fix anything that they have questions about.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, can you mute, please?
Oh.
Can everyone mute? Okay. Let's see. And then, if all goes well, by June 2024, you will get notified that, yay, you've been awarded a grant, and then you can move on with implementing your grant. So I just want to tell y'all, it's a long haul. We will be as transparent with the process as we get information, but I'd like to tell people this up front so that you know that anything that you are planning should be planned for no earlier start than, I said, like this year, I said May 1st, but maybe June 1st would be a more realistic date. Any questions about any of this? Okay, cool. So moving right along.
Philippe, I do have a question.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm working as the Trail Town Coordinator for the Genesee Valley Greenway Trail Town Initiative.
Yes, ma'am.
And in some of the towns, they need improved sidewalks, which helps the connectivity to the trails and also safety with crosswalks and such. Would a sidewalk and safety kind of project in a hamlet or village be a project that might be considered under infrastructure?
Okay, so what I've been told is anything that needs a building permit, anything that is going to involve like heavy machinery, possibly it would be related to infrastructure and construction. And I will get to that in a second. There's a little bit of a complication, not really complication, but it's more, there's more oversight with construction because you need basic agency. So basically that's a third party looking, kind of overseeing the operations and making sure all the federal standards are being upkept. And with that, the basic agency also takes a $5,000 fee for their efforts. And so historically, New York State has shied away from infrastructure projects. And also, I think because infrastructure, like a lot of infrastructure takes like a lot of funding, like millions of dollars. So typically anything that area development is going to support, it would be like gap funding, right? But I'll talk about that in a moment, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll get back to you. But if I don't, just jump in and remind me. So real quick, letter of intent. This is just our internal form, our Southern Tier West internal form. Again, it's due March 15th. And it's a very basic form. your contact information and just a little blurb of what you're thinking about. It doesn't mean if you fill this out, it doesn't mean it's cemented in stone. There is some flexibility, but we do want to have an idea of what your organization is thinking about. So for instance, Pauline, she was talking about the trails. That could be something that she puts in. And then once we read it over and we're like, maybe you don't want to talk about trails, but maybe you want to have it as like equipment. You want to do the, instead of your priority being fixing the sidewalks, why don't you make the priority being purchasing equipment that could lead to fixing the sidewalks and or fixing trails, right? So there's ways to apply for this funding that it could help with your infrastructure, but it's not necessarily a construction project. Again, you don't have to be married to what you're putting on the paper, but you should have like a little bit of an idea, because the this is for us to see where your mind is at and what direction that you're going in. Does that make sense? Any questions? If not, moving right along. Okay, real quick, Appalachia, here it is. Runs through 14 states. We are at the very northern part of Appalachia, and then we go all the way down to Alabama, Mississippi, and everywhere in between. You see the middle part is very red, and the kind of outer areas are more kind of white and pink. So Appalachia, or the ARC defines every county within this region, of which there's over 400 counties within the 14 states, with these different definitions. So attainment means that you're at the same level as outside Appalachia. Competitive is you're getting there, but you're not exactly on the same level. Transitional is you could either go, your county could become competitive, or you could slip down to at risk. At risk is, at risk. You're at risk of basically falling into distress, and distress is at the very lowest, where you need all the help you can get. And so based on your county's definition, based on demographic and economic data points, you will get different levels of funding. And so I have transitional and at risk highlighted in yellow, because that is typically what our Southern Tier West region has been classified as. So moving right along. Historically, Southern Tier West region of ARC has been in, the counties have been in transition. And so that means the grant match is 50%. By the way, I should have said this at the very beginning, but this is a matching grant. So last year, was Chautauqua County slipped down to the at-risk definition. So that means 70% of the grant funds would come from ARC, and then the rest, 30%, would come from any combination of cash or in-kind match. For quite some time, Allegheny County has been at risk, and it will continue to be at risk. And so, yeah, they only have to provide, any entity that is applying within Allegheny County has to supply 30% of their in-kind or cash match. Anyone here in Cattaraugus County? Okay. Well, congratulations. It has been official that Cattaraugus County is also at risk. So that's great for y'all that are looking for funding. It's not necessarily a great thing for our communities, but that means there's an opportunity to improve, right? So all of our Southern Tier West region has this at-risk definition, classification, and you would only need 30% match. So moving right along, match. What is the match? You can have cash as your match, and ARC likes that because that means once you get your approval that, hey, you've been awarded an ARC grant or an area development grant, then right away you can start spending that money. If most of your match is in kind, then that means you might have to wait to receive those funds from the ARC. And typically how it is done is to get the funds is typically people will go ahead with whatever program that they're implementing, and then they will ask to get reimbursed by ARC. And so that's kind of why they're like, cash is, cash is king, right? So cash can be drawn from your grantee's own funds. So if you have like some account somewhere with a lot of money, then you can use that as match. It can be cash donations from non-federal third parties, partner organizations, private businesses. It can also be loans, also counted as cash. And I don't have here, but you can also have federal funds from another organization. So let's say USDA, that's the one that comes to mind. You get a grant from USDA, you can use that as match. However, within the whole, within the whole scheme of your funds, you cannot surpass 80% of your funding from federal, with federal funds. So that other 20% needs to come from somewhere else. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. All right, so in kind, match in kind can be personnel that is being used from another organization that is being kind of donated to your project. Their time, their skills, their efforts are being donated to your project. A person on loan from another organization or people, donation or use of equipment like crane or bulldozer or I don't know, like a fancy Xerox machine or whatever you need, right? It depends on your project. Expert services like engineer or architectural services, maybe architectural drawings, and value or lease of space or any other supplies or yeah, other equipment, like I said, can be used as in-kind match. Now, when you're doing your in-kind match for the final draft of your application, you need to have a commitment letter a formal commitment letter from the organizations or experts that you are working with. And it has to have the logo that is, it has to be on letterhead, and it has to be in color, and it has to have within the written portion of the letter, it has to say, I, Dr. Philippe Palmer, am committing 100 hours at $100 an hour to interfaith caregivers for expertise in blah, 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 to do such and such with the project, right? It has to be spelled out very clearly. If it's not, they will come back to you and say, hey, make sure you get this information. So yeah. Okay. Any questions there?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Tina.
Would a matching grant from another organization be considered cash? Like if
Yeah,
I
if
was
you
able to get another grant?
sure, as long as it's as long as you have that commitment letter, you just have to make sure that, so ARC is very, I guess, kind of strict in that they don't want you to use your cash until you get approval. So let's say you have $30,000 in a grant from someone else and you're like ready to go in April, but like you still haven't heard from ARC, they don't want you to start your project until you get that official letter. So that's that's a little bit of a drawback for having the cash match. But I mean, it's not something that you can, like, it's not a deal breaker, right? It's something that can be worked around.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to ARC investment priorities. So there are 5 investment priorities that ARC likes to invest in. One of them is building Appalachian businesses. So an example of that would be business incubators, right? Building Appalachia's workforce ecosystem. So anything that deals with training or anything that's going to give people jobs or upskill them, that's an example of workforce ecosystem. A lot of our institutes of higher education and the high schools, or the schools in general, public schools in general, they like to apply under this priority, this goal, as they call it. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Building Appalachia's infrastructure. So infrastructure could be roads, it could be water, it could be, doing sidewalks in a trail system. It could be fixing the trail systems, right? Maintaining them. That is a priority. Again, because sometimes those projects are very big and they are very expensive. Area development funding is usually kind of gap funding. So it's that little bit of money that, is still needed to finish up a project, and so they apply for it. By the way, I don't think I mentioned it, and I maybe should have mentioned it earlier, but the maximum award for this grant is $250,000, and that's about $100,000 more than in prior years. And that's because of the federal government kind of injecting a lot of money into the ARC. That is a finite, like that money will end at some point, maybe within a few more years. But right now, that's what our cap is. So if you're looking at $1 million project, $250,000 isn't like super a lot of money. However, it could mean the difference between being able to like finish your project and like being stuck in, like at that last little bit. Building regional culture and tourism is another investment priority. So anything involving arts and culture, you would apply for that, or that would be your main goal. And then building community leaders and capacity. So for instance, if like Leadership Allegheny or Leadership Cattaraugus, I'm not sure if there's a Leadership Chautauqua, I assume maybe there is. Or if, let's say, Chautauqua County, they wanted to do something like that, then they could, that would be a great initiative to apply for. Okay, so let me go back to infrastructure and back to Pauline's question. So federal basic agency. Basic agency is that third party. It's federal, a federal entity. That's a third party that would oversee your project. And so this is a list of the basic agency partners: U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, U.S. Department of Housing, so HUD Housing, U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development and Administration. We also have New York Housing Trust Fund, which can act as a basic agency. New York State Department of Economic Development, Empire State Development is eligible. However, because of the complications sometimes, New York State typically shies away. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means there's just a little bit more oversight that has to occur, and a little bit more work. Actually, this fiscal year, I guess is the first time in a long time. So sorry, 2023 is the first time in a long time that Southern Tier West has engaged in a construction project. And I am happy to announce that USDA did um, agree to be the basic agency for the applicant. So that's a good sign because, success builds upon success. So let's say Pauline has a great application and she wants to go through with what she wants to go through with for the trails. USDA might be more willing to say, yes, we will be the basic agency because, they were this year, right?
Just a quick question, please.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I worked for DOT as a landscape architect for 23 years and did sidewalk design and such. And I know in some projects that they collaborated with towns and consultants with oversight um, from New York State DOT, which administers projects for federal highways. Would that be an agency that you would consider is working with also New York State Department of Environmental Conservation? I've done a lot with them.
I think, yeah, New York State DOT would be a possible agency. I don't have them all listed on this PDF right here. However, I think there is a link somewhere. Oh, I think maybe it's down at the bottom of this PDF. There's links that will take you to all the information that is, or like more information, so that if you were to want to reach out to an organization, you'll have all those resources.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Okay, so just like ARC has goals and priorities, New York State also has goals and strategies of how to uplift the Appalachian region in New York State. And so this is just a list of, some of the challenges or opportunities. And I recommend that everybody familiarizes themselves with these strategies, because they are asked in the application, in the narrative. You will be asked about, like, so how does your project align with the New York State strategies? How does your project align with the ARC goals? And like I said before, there are links throughout this document, and at the very end that will guide you to more information so you can familiarize yourselves with that. But yeah, keep in mind during this program cycle, the Department of State will seek out projects that emphasize the following priorities. They will advance the REDC strategies, priorities, the LDDs, that's us, so Southern Tier West SEDS document, and the county or community comprehensive plans. Ultimately, addressing all three is best. You can also find our SEDS document at southerntierwest.org. And my lovely colleague, Stephanie Benang, is in the process of writing a new SEDS document. But you, again, will be asked within the project narrative, how are you addressing the SEDS? How are you using the SEDS document to help uplift the area and move forward with your program? So your program should contribute measurably positive economic impact and advance economic development. It should demonstrate job creation or alternatively demonstratively retain local jobs. So I'm going back to construction real quick, but construction, if you were going to hire people that are in the area and you're maintaining those jobs, that would be something that you would put in your application, right? Also, you can train the workforce for employment in wealth-producing careers, and or you can promote smart growth and or village or urban center commerce, revitalization, and foster rehabilitation of local pockets of distress. All right, so local pockets of distress. Allegheny County doesn't really have any local pockets of distress, they say. At least according to the latest data. The closest would be in Wellsville. However, in Cattaraugus County, those pockets of distress are in around Olean and Salamanca. And then in Chautauqua, it's Dunkirk and Jamestown. Those are the pockets of distress. So anything that, any programs or projects that revolve around those areas are looked at favorably. All right. Any questions with any of that stuff before I move on? Okay. Moving right along. What makes a good ARC project? So, for strategic, it solves challenges in new and innovative ways. So let's say you're an arts organization and you know that, well, art maybe like not a lot of people think that art is a great investment. But let's say you're like, hey, art is a great investment. Art can be medicine. Art can be therapy. Art can be a community. Instead of just surviving, they're thriving, right? So you start partnering up with your arts organization into with health organizations. Or let's say you're a trail system and you are like, hey, exercise is healthy, right? Getting out in the fresh air is healthy. And you partner with a hospital. I don't know. But new and challenging, innovative ways to solve problems, right? And then you must include numbers within your application. So outputs and outcomes, you got to do it. So I know it's hard. And like, how can I say how many jobs will be created by this theoretical project that may or may not get funded? But you got to do it. And it's better to be realistic. So maybe when you're doing your planning, shoot for the moon. So I'm going to create 100 jobs and then like say, okay, based on my 100 jobs, that's my goal, right? I would love to do that. But the real, like realistically speaking, how many people would apply for those jobs? And then realistically speaking, how many can we actually have within this time frame? And so maybe it's like, okay, fine, I'm going to go for 20 jobs. So being real and saying, I'm going to go for 20 jobs, like full-time jobs with this project, and surpassing it is way better than saying, I'm going to go for 100 jobs. We're going to create 100 jobs. They're going to be full-time. They're going to be awesome. They're going to be amazing. And then saying, oh man, we only got 10 or oh, we only got 20. So yeah, be realistic. But you got to include numbers. You got to include how much money might come in. But there's ways to do it, right? And that's based on various data points and looking at also other successful grants from like-minded programs, of which just ask me and I can find them for you, and I can, like provide you that information so you can look through it and it'll help inform you a little bit better. Okay, I kind of got to this when I was talking about the solving challenges in new and innovative ways, but cultivating new partnerships, right? So cultivating new partnerships with organizations that like maybe never have been thought about before, or cultivating new partnerships with organizations that, like you've had relationships with, but they haven't really been like super committed, right? You guys haven't worked on a specific program on a long-term sustainable basis. And the reasoning for that, probably don't have to tell any of y'all, but when the more partners you have, the more people to bolster you, right? The more people to like be your cheerleaders, the more people that will put in that effort to make sure that you succeed, right? Because if they're collaborating with you, then they're going to be wanting to see you succeed, because if you succeed, then they succeed, right? And to that point, it should be sustainable beyond the grant period. So this grant might only be for like 18 months, but you want to think about like at least a 3-year plan. And there are questions within the application of like, so what's your 3-year goal, right? Any questions there? Okay, it's pretty straightforward. All right. Like I said, numbers, numbers, numbers. Make sure you put numbers. So output measures how many businesses will be served, how many communities, how many households, numbers, 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 but be realistic in your numbers, right? And then with the output measures, you will want to or have to have outcome measures. And so businesses served, well, how many businesses were improved? Maybe you served 20 businesses, but maybe only 5 were improved. Maybe those other 15 didn't need to be improved. They were doing just fine. And same goes for all those other things, right? Okay. Before we move on to that other stuff, so we have 14 people, 13 people, excluding myself in this. Would anyone like to share? Like Pauline shared a little bit of what she was talking about because she had the question about basic or no, about construction project. So would anyone like to share their ideas of what they have in the works?
I will. I'm Tina with the Cuba Library, and we are looking at renovating our children's area. And we are located in the downtown area, so I'm not sure if it would fall under a building project because it's just like a facelift. It's not heavy construction, or if it would fall under the cultural and tourism. It does go along with our town comprehensive plan. I've already looked into that. So, but yeah, that's what we're thinking of doing is renovating the children's area.
Okay, great, Tina. So I'll give you a quick example. Alfred State, a couple years ago, they applied for a program that it was involving like I think AC and their HVAC and refrigeration program. But in part of the project, they had to kind of revamp a space. And so there was the question of, to facilitate the equipment, there was the question of, is this a construction project, or is this just kind of meeting the needs for the equipment? And it's more programmatic. And it was concluded by, I guess, New York State that it could be a programmatic fund. As opposed to construction, because they didn't need building permits and it was just renovation. And there were no architects coming in, and it was just kind of like you said, maybe walls being moved, like what is that stuff, drywall, or electricity being run, and things of that matter. So we can get deeper into it as we go forward, but it doesn't sound like it would be construction.
Okay, well that's great to hear.
It
The,
is.
yeah, the other grant I was thinking of trying to apply for is that they do have library construction aid grants So I guess that would be another question to look into. If it does end up being a construction project, could the state library that oversees that grant count as my federal or state organization to oversee it? But
Possibly. And so I'm just going to give you advice as somebody who's written grants before. And so as a grad student, I had to apply for a lot of grants to fund my education. And um, I wouldn't apply for everything, but I would apply for things that I would apply for everything that was applicable to me. So I encourage you to apply for this grant, but I also encourage you to apply for that library grant that you're talking about, because it doesn't mean that. So you have this. Let's say you have this children's area. What are you going to do with it? Maybe now you need organization. Like you need program funding. Maybe you need to hire staff for that area. So apply for it regardless. And then, yeah, this, a lot of the grants that I've applied for myself, they asked like, hey, so what other grants are you applying for? To make sure that you're aware that there's other things out there, right? And you had to list like 2 or 3. So I encourage actually everybody to like do a little bit of research, find what else is out there, because it can, like I said, it can supplement your this possible project. Or if you don't, if you don't get this fund, then it can, go in place of that. So you can still keep moving, right? Keep moving forward, keep growing, keep benefiting the community. That's just my 2 cents.
thank you.
Thank you, Tina. All right. All right, so prerequisite information for federal grants. Make sure you have, so it used to be that you needed a SAM number or a DUNS number. That's no longer the case. Now everyone must have a unique entity ID number. It's really easy. It's free. The link, there is a link. Click here for the link. And it'll take you through the steps. It's as easy as applying for a SAMS number. So make sure you do that, because you will be asked for it somewhere down the road. We at Southern Tier West don't necessarily check for it, but the state will, and the federal government definitely will. So you need that in order to, just for accountability, so they can keep track of y'all. And this is just an example of your non-construction project application checklist. It's a little bit different for construction, but not too much different. Basically, your final application will be about between 50 and 70 pages, depending on how much, additional documentation you have, how many letters of support you have, how many letters of commitment you have. Would anyone else like to share what they have in mind? Another project?
I have a question
Yes.
about a different project. I've actually been working with DEC and the National Park Service on a master plan for the West Almond Trail System, which is on state forest land.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite a community benefit for health and wellness, and getting people outdoors and open spaces, as we've experienced a big increase in the use of parks, especially during and after COVID. Been working with Alfred State College and Alfred University as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot of community collaboration going on. And one of the things we're talking about after we complete the master plan with DEC and the National Park Service is trying to not only prioritize future trail projects, but perhaps build some Adirondack shelters for camping with the using the students at Alfred State College. And they would be learning their construction trades for building the lean-tos. Would something like that perhaps fit into this kind of program?
Definitely, yeah, and projects like that have been funded in the past. So yeah, totally. And we
Thank
can
you.
talk more about that.
Okay.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move on. Yeah, this is just the sample grading criteria. I won't really go through it too much, but you guys can see, you'll have access to this. I'll provide you this so you can look it over at your leisure. But there are points assigned based on the various criteria. All right, key points. Maximum grant, $250,000 for the next few years. But this year, for fiscal year 2024, it's $250,000. Again, this is a long haul grant, meaning your project won't start till mid 2024. So make sure when you put on your letter of intent or when you do your timeline that you are putting June 1st as a safe date to start. Projects can last up to 18 months. And then priority is given to projects focused on those with significant economic outputs and outcomes. So remember, numbers, 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 they are important. And then although construction renovation grants are considered eligible, the extra cost and bureaucracy associated with involving an external government entity to manage the grant, aka basic agency, is not prioritized. But I'm not saying that it can't be done. Especially if you're bringing in other funding. Part of the reason why New York State has shied away from construction grants in the past is because, let's say, 5 applicants are applying for construction grants and they move through. That means there's $25,000 less money that is coming into the region because $25,000 is going out to those basic agencies. But if you already have funds from another agency and you're bringing them in, then, some of that money that money is not being taken out of the ARC funds. And you're just bringing in more money anyway, so it's a win-win. Let's see, planning and R&D grants, while eligible, have lower priority than those that are ready to implement. So if you do have like let's say a shovel-ready a construction project, that would be prioritized over something of like, we want to build a park right now, but we need to do some research. There are other grants available through ARC that might be better to fund your project. And then depending on an ask, between 4 and 6 projects get funded for any given year. Yeah, so don't wait, do your homework, start the conversation, fill out an LOI. You guys are all here. And yeah, I am your point person. So make sure that you are communicating with me via email, via some sort of teleconference thing, telephone. I'm happy to come out to your site and meet. I'm excited to possibly go and check out the trail system out in Allegheny County, I think Thursday, is it? And yeah, I'm happy to look things over, brainstorm with you, help connect you with various partners that maybe you didn't think about. Yeah. So again, here's my contact information. I'm the primary contact. Anything that I don't know, I can always go to our executive director, Richard Zink, and ask him. And any questions? And then resources. Here's a bunch of resources. They are all clickable links, and I will send you guys, I think, I'm not sure if I think in the invitation, I might have sent this to you, but I'll send this out to everyone again. And I just want to notify you about the other ARC programs. So they have a J1 visa waiver program for special specialists that, coming from international areas. So like, I don't know, colleges, hospitals, or any other entity that might need somebody to come in that cannot be met like within the workforce here. There are there is that program through ARC. There's also the Inspire grant, which stands for Investment Supporting Partnerships in Recovery Ecosystems Initiative. So if you are an entity that works with addiction, or you are thinking about partnering with someone, an organization that works with addiction, then Inspire would be a good grant for you to apply for. However, I think the applications are coming up, like what is it? The due date for those applications are coming up fairly soon, and it is a very long application. So if you're thinking about it now, you should plan for applying next year, so in 2024, because it does take a lot of work. The maximum, it is a matching grant, and the maximum award is $500,000. The Mental Health Association in Chautauqua County actually received a grant last year. So 2023, they received a $500,000 grant for their initiative. And they partnered with UPMC and a bunch of other people, I think JCC as well. And they do have webinars. There might be another one coming up, but the last one was February 15th, I believe. Later today, I think at, what is it, like 3 o'clock? Sorry for squinting in your screen, but 3:30, there is a power application information session similar to this. And that stands for Partnerships for Opportunity and Workforce and Economic Revitalization Initiative. And basically what that is they are prioritizing communities that have moved away from coal, and now they're being adversely affected. So Dunkirk was an area that like is considered a impact area by not producing coal anymore. And there can be an argument for your eligibility for the power application. Again, it's a larger grant. It runs into the millions. There is an information session, like I said, and I do have a link within this PowerPoint to that. And then I think that's it. Oh, and then there's the Workforce Opportunities for Rural Communities Fund, which is actually partnered through the Department of Labor. And that's also a big grant. They have a fund. So that runs up into the, I think, millions as well, maybe like 2 million. It's a large grant. There is a link. I encourage you to explore as much as you can. And although I'm only, I guess, responsible for the area development grant, it's not to say that I can't help you with other with these other grants. And I do have access to all sorts of applications. So if you're curious, like, what is a power grant? I'm interested in seeing one. I can provide you with a successful grant application, and you can look through it, because that power grant, it actually requires multiple counties and sometimes involves multiple states. So if you're an entity that has, things going on in Pennsylvania, because it's right there, then power might be something that you would look into. But anyway, I will stop there. And are there any other questions? Well, it is 11 o'clock. I have kept to my promise of allowing you guys to giving you guys that hour, and also giving you guys that time to hopefully spend on doing something special for yourselves. So with that said, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, feel free to contact me. Again, I'm happy to come out. I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.